Hello. Welcome to this week's edition of the Turning Points podcast. I stretched that hello out a little bit longer than I should. We had a very, very exciting conversation. Got back to the roots of Christianity, got to talk about some mystical experiences, and had just a really wonderful time talking to Maren Aspaas and all she's been through and what she had going on to date. So it was really fun.
Yeah, she is a spiritual health practitioner and mindfulness instructor, has been working in hospitals, specifically the psychiatric hospitals, for over 18 years. She's raised in the Midwest in a small farming community. So Maren talks about being, raised very sort of religious in the Lutheran, specifically the Lutheran religion. And then we go way off to there as how she's become a chaplain at a psychiatric hospital. And she had a vision of Jesus. That's why we're going to call this podcast Jesus in the Hallway. So y'all got to listen to this. She is an absolute delight, incredibly well-spoken, very smart, and just exudes caring and love and humility.
Enjoy.
Hello, Maren. Welcome to our podcast.
Well, thanks for having me, Corinne and Sean. I've been looking forward to this. Yeah.
Oh, we're so happy. I love, the first 20 podcasts were all like old friends of mine. I used to work for Deepak. And so I knew everybody. And then when we started to have people that neither one of us knew, it's kind of a different dynamic, and it's kind of fun unfolding the story and stuff. So thank you for agreeing to come and have our spiritual tea time, a little chat.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
Okay. So we're going to dive in with our question.
Okay.
So many seekers can recall that point in time when their reality or their conditioned beliefs no longer worked for them. So do you remember when you became a seeker?
Yeah. It's weird though, because it happened and then I did nothing. Yeah. So what happened to me was, I was raised Lutheran, and I was a really good Lutheran kid, and also went to a Lutheran college and was just kind of in this one belief system for most of my life. And not a whole lot had really happened in my life. I really enjoyed being Lutheran, and at college, I loved singing and stuff like that. And I had friends who we'd get together and have tea and talk about our faith and God and stuff like that. And so one night when we had been doing this, it was we were up late. It was 2 a.m. when I finally walked back to my dorm room, which was almost the opposite end of the building of theirs. I had to go up 4 flights of stairs and down this hallway. And I was so tired. And when I got to the top of the stairs, I opened the fire door and Jesus was there. And Jesus was there in the hallway. And Jesus didn't say anything to me, but extended his hand, and I put my hand in his, and he walked me down the hallway to my dorm room, and I opened the door and went inside and went to bed. And I felt a lot of peace from that. It's funny that I think I wasn't really alarmed by it, but I never said anything to a soul. Nobody, even though I'd spent the whole night with these people who were Christian, and, we would pray when we were together, and things like that. And I never said anything about seeing Jesus in the hallway until much, much later in my life. Well, not much later. It was 4 years later. I was living in Japan. And I'd graduated from college and moved to Japan, and I was an English teaching missionary for the Lutheran Church. And you're assigned to work like an educational setting, but then also you work with a specific congregation. And so a lot of the Japanese people I was meeting were trying to fit this new idea of their Christian faith and this like personal relationship with Jesus, you know, into their whole worldview, which was mostly having been raised in a Buddhist Shinto culture. And they didn't have that idea of like a God being there for them, you know, this personal relationship or praying to a God like that. It just was not really part of what they understood. Concepts like sin were brand new to them and things like that. And so I ended up in like noodle time after worship service. I think it was like, we always had noodles. And I ended up telling somebody about this thing, this hallway thing. And it was like the first time I'd ever really told anybody. And that I had seen Jesus in the hallway. And this Japanese person is like, oh, you have to tell everybody. Like you have to. And I hadn't done a sermon in Japanese, and they're like, you have to, you know, give a sermon in Japanese and tell us all the story of seeing Jesus in the hallway. And so I did. And I mean, my Japanese was decent, but someone helped me write it all out. And that was like the one and only sermon I gave in Japan was about seeing Jesus in the hallway. And they all just loved it. They thought it was amazing. So that was the first time I ever started talking about it. Can
you tell us a little bit more of what he looked like and how it just kind of what, like, was he illuminated? What was he wearing?
So he wasn't touching the ground. He was just kind of a little bit off the ground. And then he was fairly dark. He had dark skin and long, dark, curly, wavy hair. And I don't think he was really glowing that much, you know, but I'm not sure why I knew right away it was Jesus, because like all the Jesuses, you know, my childhood, all the paintings were like, you know, blonde-haired, blue-eyed dudes. And it's like, this guy didn't look like them at all. But I just knew it was him. I knew it was him.
You felt it. And even though his feet were floating off the ground, you still felt his hand in yours, like it was a physical.
Yeah.
And was he wearing like a long robe? Or?
Yeah.
And he looked right into your eyes?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It was just like ordinary and extraordinary at the same time. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. Cool. So what did the Japanese think about that story?
They thought it was so special and so wonderful. Yeah. It really, in a way, encouraged them that this could be real, you know, that this faith relationship I have with God could be real. So
nice.
Yeah.
And are you still, so then what was sort of your path after that? So, because you had said I used to be Lutheran. So yeah. And actually, do you mind sharing? Because I'm surprised that a couple of even obviously not majorly Christian friends, but some people have said to me recently, like they don't understand that Lutheran and all these different, they're all Christian faiths. They're just different brands of Christian faith. So can you give a little byline of what Lutheran? Their brand?
So Martin Luther was the original Protestant. He was a Catholic cleric, and he thought, well, there was a lot of corruption in the Catholic Church at that time regarding like people being priests, but not being married, but actually having a maid that they had children with. And so he had an issue with that. And he had an issue with indulgences, like having to pay to have your sins prayed for, your sins removed. And so he decided that he didn't want to be in a Catholic church that was like that. I think he hoped to transform the Catholic Church, but he didn't. It stayed the way it was, and he left and started a new perspective on the Christian faith, which really, there are a couple texts that like the Catholics believe more in the importance of the demonstration of your faith, faith through works, salvation through this process of being baptized and having your first catechism and your confession and, and these kind of like stages towards being assured that you'll go to heaven when you die. And Luther thought, no, you just need to believe in God. And the best way to believe in God is to have a minister who is well educated in the Bible and in theology that can give you the accurate information about God through a sermon. And that will be one of the best avenues for your faith. So it's another word to use for it is it's a confessional faith, and that you are proclaiming that you believe that this is the way that you achieve salvation, know God, have faith. And Luther also didn't think that confession to a priest was necessary anymore. It's more just a personal experience you have with God. We every Sunday, Lutherans, and I believe other Protestant denominations will say a joint confession of sins, and we say it together, that we have fallen short, and we will proclaim that together. But as far as doing that process with a priest, that was eliminated with the Lutheran Church. And then he was the first one to publish the Bible in a common language, in German. So that was a big deal. He felt like everybody should be able to have access to the text.
And what year, do you know what year that was?
No.
Okay, that's okay. It's old.
Yeah. I'm not a good Lutheran anymore. No.
It was hundreds of years ago, maybe
500 and some.
Yeah.
Because they celebrated the 500th anniversary. I want to say maybe 10 years ago or something like that.
Yeah. And it was a big deal. It was a huge war about it. I mean, it was not a pleasant, it was sacrilegious what he did, to the Catholic Church. So big deal. So,
big deal.
It was it's actually the direct path of Christianity. If you think about it, it is, you're removing anybody else between you and the relationship with Christ or the God figure.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Nice. Okay. So where's that next transition?
Yeah. So I thought, I had a fantastic time in Japan, and I feel like missionaries are a different breed of humans. Some of them, like I'm taken with the Poisonwood Bible. It's one of my favorite books. And I feel like the missionary work represented in that book, I don't know if you're familiar with it, but it's not.
No, but I'll write it down. That's not, yeah.
It's lovely. It's about a Baptist missionary who goes to Africa, and the story is told from the perspective of his 4 daughters. They were a little bit more zealous than the missionaries in Japan. The missionaries in Japan pretty much had an uphill climb. And, when I was there was something like 1% of the population was Christian. It's so culturally divergent to accept another faith, to, marry someone of a different culture. And so, it just was really hard for a Japanese person, especially when I lived there, which was in the late 80s, early 90s. Like the eldest son would have had a really difficult time becoming Christian, because they would have left a lot of their responsibilities towards their family. So the missionaries in Japan, I think we knew that we're going to convert a lot of people. So instead, they just shared this open-hearted love, with Japanese people. Just, every missionary I met was just this amazing, big-hearted person. And I thought that was fantastic. And I thought I really would like to be a pastor. I'd like to maybe be a missionary, because of that wonderful vibe that I got from them. And so when I came back to the States, I went to seminary in Minnesota, and I learned ancient Greek. And then the first semester, I learned that in the summer, so you could read the New Testament in Greek. And then that first semester, we started studying the book of Mark. And so the book of Mark is often considered the most original text about Jesus's life. It's the closest in age to when he died. I mean, still, it was the earliest pieces of, text are still decades after Jesus died, but it's considered probably the most original source. And other books of the gospel for some are built on Mark. And so it's OG, and I had learned all my Greek, and the book of Mark in its original form before it got added onto, ends with women going to Jesus's tomb and finding it empty, but that's it. Like we see Jesus and we know he rose and, he's resurrected. We saw his body, none of that. It just ends and they're like afraid and that's it. And I was like, whoa, the other part got added on, and they don't tell you this when you're sitting in the pews, and because you just get the book and all the text is all black and white and you think it's perfect in this form that it's delivered to you. And I was like, And this thing had already happened where I'd seen Jesus, but I hadn't really done anything with that. And then this happened. And I was just like, my faith was just crumbling around me. And it happened to somebody else in my class too. And we were both kind of like, oh, and looking around, and I don't know if everybody else was having the same experience that I was having, but it was just like dissolving, And so this other guy and I decided we were going to go in and talk to our professor about it, because we're like, ooh. And so I'm not going to name the professor because I don't want to out him, but I probably already have, just putting it all in context. But we went in and we said, so Mark doesn't end with a resurrection. That's kind of important in Christianity. Like Easter is the holiday. Christmas gets all the glory, but it's truly Easter. Like Jesus needs to raise from the dead for this whole thing to work. And it didn't happen in the book of Mark. And he gets up, the professor gets up and he goes and he closes the door. Like we're having this secret conversation, It was so funny. And then, he's like, okay, so tell me more. Like, how is it affecting your faith? And he's like, yeah. He's like, we learn things when we study this text that we don't talk about when we preach. We don't talk about, we just kind of accept the faith as it is presented to us. And there is no resurrection story in Mark, And he said, and you'll have to sort it out for yourself. And whoa. Yeah. And I, like a few months later, I left seminary. Like I couldn't stay because you have to be a seminary student. You have to go in front of this panel and tell them how you are going to teach the Lutheran doctrine to your congregation. And it's so important because, like I said, Luther believed that your faith is going to be assisted by appropriate preaching and knowledge of the text and following the theological doctrines. And I couldn't do it.
Wow.
Like, I just couldn't do it.
So it sounds like the ministry there, the ministry was there, that their Christian understanding was there, but the theology and pairing those two together, when you say theology, are you bringing the historical aspects of the text?
Yeah. Like, I mean, literally in the words theology, like what language you use to describe God, how we talk about God, who God is, what God does, all that kind of stuff. Yeah.
Gotcha. So what you have is this sacred, arguably the most sacred part of it, where it's the most direct access to, being as close to and timeline to it. And it's a cliffhanger essentially. Was it, if you don't mind me asking, was it ever given to you then where the resurrection story came from? Did they ever discuss, that's in other books though, but it's added on. It's not from the original.
Yeah. So, this is a rabbit hole. So there's a lot of the Christian, the story of Jesus, I should say, that is presented in the Bible that pulls on narratives that existed in the area at the time when people were writing this down, and using the same kind of mythological language about Jesus, that he was born from a virgin, or that he rose from the dead. Those were common ideas about a person who was seen as either having some kind of divine characteristics, or it was a savior, that kind of language. So,
it was
I feel bad. Like, this is why I could never be a minister, because it was probably, a lot of it was made up, know? And I've been to India too, and I've seen like the murals of the Buddha, and I'm like, and so there's stories about the Buddha too, and how he was born, and paintings made of it. And it's like, okay. But then I would come back to my professor's question, which is, but what do you believe now? Like, how does it really impact your faith, knowing that this is maybe just part of a mythological story, Yeah.
Wow. I mean, there's so much to unpack with that, but let's move on. So how long were you in seminary school before you left?
Oh, I just stayed for the one semester.
Wow.
And
that was enough for you.
Yeah. And I was like, I love the topic of religion. And there was another seminary in town that allowed me to bring my credits and get a master's of religious studies, which is what I did. And I started like learning about more religions than the one I was raised in. And then I wrote a master's thesis that wrestled with this whole seeing Jesus. So I finally came back to that, because I was trying to, I think that ultimately seeing Jesus in the hallway was this whole new bit of information about reality. And I think that the Lutheran faith, as I experienced it, was such kind of a solid, non-mystical, it was already formed, the faith, and then it was handed to me. And seeing Jesus in the hallway didn't seem to fit in with that. There was no one ever talked about it, anything like that. There was never anything in a worship setting that alluded to there being revelations from God beyond Martin Luther. So I was trying to figure out, and I think maybe it was my one last, like, can I ever be a Lutheran again? Writing this master's thesis, and my question was, is there room in the Lutheran Church for personal mystical experience? And so in the thesis, I wrote out what had happened to me, and then I interviewed about 15 other people who I found through acquaintances. I put an ad in the seminary newsletter at the Lutheran Seminary in town, and I interviewed all these people and a lot of them had never shared their stories either. Because it just isn't, and I was maybe the first person to hear them. Stories about, hearing the voice of God, seeing angels, kind of some prophetic healing, that kind of thing. Yeah. And my conclusion was there is no room for current revelation of God because it doesn't fit into the Lutheran doctrine. So sigh. Well,
that's what's interesting is, we have these boxes of programming or these boxes of belief structures, and they're built on, they can be extremely secure, like you mentioned, and that can be very beneficial to some people because they need that sense of security within an organization that is, this block of locked tight. This is what we believe. And if you want to participate in there, it's open to that. But then you have these experiences of reality, and we can, I'm sure we'll get into whether or not that I'm sure there's a conversation or either a contemplation. Was that real? Is it real to anybody else? If it was real to me, and you have these experiences, and that's why they're mystical, is because there's not necessarily a universal answer to that. And because there's not a universal answer, we just push it off and we don't include that in our conversations. And so when you experience that now, was that a revelation to you then at that point of realizing how many more people are having these experiences that aren't invited to the conversation, or what happened next then for you?
Yeah. Well, I walked away from the Lutheran Church, and I couldn't, it was becoming increasingly difficult for me to have a belief structure, something that has unfolded and just continued to unfold until today. The people that shared with me for my master's thesis, they commented on how it helped them a little bit to realize the importance of what had happened to them. I think not talking about it and not sharing it had put off the significance of it for them. But this was in 1994, I think, that I was interviewing people. So I have no idea where any of those people are now. And, it's hard. It was harder to stay in touch. It was all by phone, telephone, and then, seeing people in person and stuff. So, and we can, we'll talk probably more about my profession. But I've had that experience in my professional life of people working through and thinking through these spiritual experiences that they've had and realizing the significance of them and the importance of them and how much, how valuable they were to them. So, yeah.
Well, that's kind of we tend. I'm sorry, Corinne, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Go ahead.
That's what we kind of explore in our conversations is are those situations that are monumental to your we call it awakening, or your seeking, where it just shifts your perspective, and it's like this mirror for everything that you have thought you were up to this point, and it starts putting you on the questioning path of if I believe in this, but I'm rejected by this, or I don't fit in with this, then what am I? And then what am I? And then what am I? And you start to learn how many things you aren't and are, and then aren't ever again, and he just keeps evolving into this, I'm nothing.
You're reading my mind. Oh, that's exactly what I did, Sean.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. So first I tried to hang with the Unitarians. because they don't really have a sturdy belief structure. They just have these 7 things that they think are really important.
Yeah.
And I could live with those. Like, I'm down with the environment and everybody having, inherent worth and stuff like that. But they didn't have a lot of beliefs. And so I tried that out. And then it wasn't quite spiritual enough for me, because still I was feeling like the thing that happened with Jesus, and then some other things that have happened that we can maybe talk about, were important to me. And I wasn't getting community and connection about those things through the Unitarian Universalist Church.
Because I think Unitarian, they don't like the word God, right?
Yeah. The first Unitarian church I went to, we were singing in the choir, and we're literally like changing the words of the songs. We're crossing the word God out. And it was like this huge moment for me. And I'm looking around at the other people and I'm like, do you know what we're doing right now? We're crossing out God. Yes. Hello. Like, yeah. And they just see, they'd already been Unitarian Universalists for a long time. I'm like, oh yeah, we're crossing out God. But I'm like, oh my God. Yeah. So yeah. But still it was not like enough for me. And so I went back to seminary while I was attending the Unitarian Universalist Church, and went through and got a Master's of Divinity, and thought I was going to be a UU minister. Like, I'm going to do this because I don't have to teach people the one true faith. And at the end of seminary, I had like one more thing I had to do, which is clinical pastoral education, which a lot of seminaries require now. And you work in a hospital or a nursing home or somewhere where you're working with people who are ill and or aging. And I did that, and it was over. I loved it. I loved the hospital setting. I had been pre-med in college, but had abandoned the idea of med school my senior year. I was like, I want to go to Japan. Like, I don't want to do that. And I felt so at home in the hospital and in the one-on-one setting. Yeah. And then in my residency as a chaplain, as a clinical chaplain, that was when I was first assigned to a psychiatric unit. And that's where I really found my place. I really enjoy working. And to this day, I still work with people who are admitted to psychiatric units. Yeah.
And you get to, and we talked a little bit about it when you first logged on before we pressed the record button, how you've had Jesus and God in hanging out
with me. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So is there another, you said you had some other mystical experiences. You want to share those?
Yeah. So after I was just not getting fulfilled by Unitarian Universalism alone, I started studying Andean shamanism, and worked with a shamanic teacher locally, but I also have a shamanic teacher from Peru. And I, about the same time, I had this experience where I woke up one morning, and maybe you guys have discussed this in another conversation, but there's transitional state of your brainwaves when you're falling asleep and you're waking up. And so you're transitioning usually from theta to alpha when you're waking, and alpha to theta when you're falling asleep. And so I've had mystical experiences often when I'm waking. And so when I woke up one morning, the ceiling of my bedroom had green Tara there.
Nice.
And I was going through, a transition in my life, and I didn't know a lot about Tibetan Buddhism at all, really. But I knew it was green Tara, which I don't know how I knew that, but I knew it was. And so green Tara was in my bedroom, and I'm like, green Tara is in my bedroom. Like, why? And didn't say anything, just there, larger than life. And so I went to the local Tibet store. And I started up a conversation with the woman behind the counter, and I'm like, so I saw green Tara, on my bedroom ceiling. And she said, oh, that's very auspicious. That's and she's like, and she's handing me things. She's picking out, she's like, some mala, you need mala. And then she gave me this picture of green Tara, which I still have somewhere around here. Yeah. That I've always had. And she wrote down the mantra for me. She wrote down the green Tara mantra. And she's like, now you need to start saying this. And that was my gateway into Tibetan Buddhism. And I ended up meeting her aunt and her aunt's son, who live here on the West Coast. And he became the teacher of Tibetan Buddhism for me. And his mother died about 6 years ago. She was a lovely woman. She was a yogini. And the spiritual center in Eugene, Oregon is named after her. It's called the Palmo Peace Center. And she was probably the most enlightened person I've ever been in the presence of. She was just emanating unconditional love all the time. When she stayed at my house a couple times, I could hear her downstairs praying all night long. Praying for other people, She had long phone calls with people, wondering about, their children or their health or things like that. And she was constantly consoling them and praying for them. Just an incredible woman, truly incredible. Yeah. And she escaped Chinese occupation of Tibet with injuries and losing family members, and immediately went into retreat because she knew she needed to cope with that level of trauma that she had. And after many years as a practitioner, her teacher said, "You're okay. You got to get married and have kids." And she's like, "No." Have kids. And he's like, "You're going to have these beautiful children and you need to marry." And her husband is a really wonderful person too. And she had 7 children with him.
Oh my gosh.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah. And 4 of them are teachers.
Wow.
So she needed to give birth. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
So have you studying the Andean shamanism, did you go to Peru at all, or?
Yeah. I've met, his name is Americo Yabar, and I've met with him in the United States and in Mexico and in Peru. Oh, and here in Oregon too. So Peru was a really wonderful learning experience because Americo teaches about energy and also says that he is a mystical poet. And that reality is never going to be as tangible as you think it should be or needs to be or you want it to be or whatever. But instead, tuning us into the energy of what we are experiencing. And so, starting with just fundamental energetic passes and things like that, where we would feel the energy between the people in the group. And then other things like he would ask us to throw our energy somewhere. Like when we were in Mexico, we were all sitting underneath a palapa. And he said, what I want you to do is I want you to move your energy so I can no longer see it. And I want you to hide your energy. And then we all had our eyes closed. And he said, and then if I can still sense your energy, then I'm going to just, like touch you on the head or whatever. So, I'm like, oh my God, I don't know what the heck I'm doing. But I just decided that I was going to have my energy go to the top of the palapa. So I just imagined it, and with my intent, I just put my energy up there, and he just walked right by me. So I guess, and I was like, well, okay, I guess I think I know what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing exactly. And so we were in Peru, we were doing more of that and more of tuning into the energy of an area, of the land. He works with stones. And so we learned Kuyo Hampek, stone healing. And so it's kind of like, I also learned healing touch when I was a chaplain, a hospital chaplain. And it's very similar. And I've used stones to not only like help clear energy out of people's bodies, but also clear out a space as well, like a house or a room or things like that.
Beautiful, beautiful. And is ayahuasca ceremony a part of his tradition at all?
No, I don't know if he's ever done it. We've drunk a lot of pisco together, but
what's that? What's that?
Some of the Peruvian like vodka like thing. Yeah.
Oh.
A lot of that. But no, he's never introduced it to us. And I feel like I trust him enough that if he said, I think we should do this, I would be like, okay, Yeah. But he's mostly in the mountains.
Yeah, we had a friend of mine on a few months ago who studied with Don Miguel Ruiz in the Andes, and
in the mountains.
Yeah, in the mountains.
Yeah.
They did a trip there. She's actually Yukiko. She's born in Japan, and then I met her in LA. Teaching yoga. She's a mutual yogi from LA. And she told a really cool story. I'll have to send you the link to her podcast, but she told a really cool story about him coming up to her. They were just they'd been in Peru for a couple of weeks, and he came up to her and kind of tapped her on her shoulder and said, I want you to send your energy over into the bird. Was it over there, Sean, or something like that? Like go go into the bird. I want you to go occupy that bird over there. And then she's like, I can't do that. And he goes, yeah, you can. And she said, all of a sudden she was in the bird and then came back again. And anyways, pretty wild stories. So,
I've learned confidence and intent. And I hope humility. Because I'm not sure that that it's accessible in a helpful way without those things. You can do a lot with intent, a lot. I've been kind of surprised the things that happen when I just put my intent to them, and I'm like, oh my gosh, like really? Yeah, like. I think I can tell this personal story. So a year ago, I broke my leg in 2 places. And then about a month and a half ago, I had surgery to take all the hardware out. And so the last meeting I had with my surgeon before the surgery was, so this could go like a, vast range of ways. He said, I might get in there and see a lot of damage and clean up and want to clean it out, and you won't be able to walk for 4 weeks. Or we could get in there and there isn't any damage, and maybe I'll just clean up a little scar tissue, and then you'll be able to bear weight right away. And so I got home and I'm like, well, I want the second one because I don't want to go through this whole like non-weight bearing thing again. And so then I just, it's a little bit like, I suppose, like manifesting too. So then every night for a week before the surgery, I just imagined the energy, like the energetic, what would you call it? Like signature of me waking up from surgery and hearing that I could just walk again and then just walk again. And so every night I'd fall asleep and I would think like, okay, I'm going to just wake up from surgery and be able to walk, and the feeling of that, the energy of that. And then that's what happened.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. I loved how you articulated that intention, humility. What was the third one? Confidence. Yeah. To me, that's the mechanics of manifestation anyway. It's just a different way of putting it.
Yeah.
You know, but though that is, I think, the intricate, they're been so subtle. And a friend of mine, Sarah McLean, is a wonderful meditation teacher. And she talks about, how the most subtle things in the world are the most powerful, like the atomic bomb, a seed.
Yeah.
And that's what an intention is. It is the most subtle.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then gradually with studying shamanism, I really came to this belief that everything is energy. Everything, and I also have a very, in a way, scientific mind because of my bachelor's degree. And I'm interested in both things being authoritative in my life, science and the energetic realm, and both scientists and mystics would probably say that everything is energy, and so then I feel as though, like, getting back to Jesus in the hallway, that what I believe I was encountering was the energy of that. Because I am a human and because I was Christian, when I witness energy, I already have a lens through which I'm going to see it. I believe when children think there's a monster under the bed, they're recognizing stuck energy, and it's under the bed or it's in the closet and it just hasn't moved. And it's got, and it's got like physical manifestations around it too, like dust and socks or whatever, but it's stuck there. And that kind of energy could look a certain way. If you are going to look at it, and it's going to manifest in a certain way. And so I believe this about, like, when people are seeing an angel, because I've talked to people from lots of different cultures, Africa or, Lakota in the plains, and everybody's describing something that's kind of like an angel, but based on their cultural experience, it will appear differently. It might be more like an eagle. Or it might be very small, or it might be really large. But as we're seeing the energy, and it's really hard to get past, like an anthropological bias. If we're going to be, if you're studying things, you realize if I'm an anthropologist, I can never truly study this culture because I'm always going to have something in me that's already interpreting.
Yeah.
And so I think when we experience energy, we're already interpreting it. And the energy is just energy. So this Jesus energy that I saw was mostly filled with peace, so it was like this embodied representation of peace, and I feel like religion has tried, in a way, to put words to the mystical, and then has done the disservice, I think, of codifying experiences, maybe an experience that just one person has had. And then all of a sudden it becomes this doctrine that we're handing over to everybody, like everybody's going to experience energy the same way, or everybody's going to have the same relationship with the mystical. So I've been less and less inclined, like Sean was saying, like progressing through, I'm going to try this, it didn't work. I'm going to try this didn't work. Less and less inclined with each passing year to give words, but instead, using words as pointers. And so I appreciate more like poetry and things. There's this line, John O'Donohue.
Sounds familiar, but I don't. Mm-mm.
Yeah, he was an Irish poet. He was, I believe, a priest, and then he left the church. And the remainder of his career, until he died about 10 years ago, was spent helping people die but then also writing. And he wrote Anamkara, a Soul Friend, which is a wonderful book. And so he's very much in love with the landscape and has a relationship with the landscape of Ireland. And there's one passage in a book where he talks about the color green, because the color green is so important to the Irish. He says, but even the color green is something that we're perceiving through having the right amount of light that's on the landscape, and how the light enters our eyes. And then we have formulated this word using these letters, and then we say this word in a particular way with our mouth, and we say that the landscape is green. And we've put that word on it. And so I feel like I want to continue to back away from putting words on things. I know words are necessary and they're essential to be able to have this conversation and describe these things, but the words can really create structure that maybe, I don't know if other people are uncomfortable, but I'm uncomfortable with a lot of structure.
Well, yeah, I think what's being pointed at is, we use the word green to communicate, or at least to point to something to be communicated with.
Yeah.
But what we often do is we let that word be the fullness of that thing. We say the landscape is green. So now the landscape is nothing more than green. And that's where we start to fail in the experience of anything, really. And it's weird because we have this persona, this personality that operates on a system of filters, lenses, really. And we communicate through that. And it is very personalized, but that personality is not the whole of us. It is the thing that is communicating with the other thing, and what happens is, I think, to point to the religion, is that, like you said, one person has this mystical experience, and now that person is the pinnacle, the closest thing to God, instead of, and this is what I think what's fascinating about the great teachers, Christ being one of them, would have mystical experiences, but would invite others to participate in those mystical experiences with God, versus, and it kind of goes back to the conversation we had where, why do they put me in an insane asylum when I say I'm God, versus when you say God, they let you write books about it. Give me the name of the
Ram Dass.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yep.
What's interesting about that is because I say I'm God and so are you, instead of just saying I'm God and you are not. That's a subtle thing that separates, but it really is what starts to create the weak foundation within an organization, is that belief that this is the one way we're going to experience as a whole, versus we all have the ability to experience that wholeness and that godliness.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So I want to, there's more things we have to talk a little more, if that's okay.
Yes.
Good. So
I've got one more story.
Okay. Tell it. Go ahead. Tell it. Then I'll keep my question. Yeah.
Okay. So, I've had a couple big realizations about life that have really helped me. And they've usually been spiritual. It's usually just been like trees talking to me and things like that. But the really big one that formed my cosmology now is one morning I woke up and I saw the universe, and the universe was filling the room that I was in. And I saw the universe as this thing that was turning slowly and all coming out of one point. Everything was coming out of one point and turning and expanding. And all colors were present in this experience. And like colors I don't know existed. I was seeing all these colors, and it's turning, and it seemed to be like replicating as it was turning, and the center of it is love. Everything is coming from this place of unconditional love, and everything is allowed. Anything can come from this place. And, all the good things we experience, all the bad things we experience, like it's all coming from this place. And that we have everything that we see, everything that we experience has this I call it primordial love. Everything has this primordial love within it. And so we have that within us, and everything is love. And I saw this, and it just blew me away for like 2 hours. My heart was just like, it was like had exploded, and everything was beautiful, and everything was love, and and it's just the way that I see reality now. And so it's not an easy way to see reality, because there are things that we would like to not have exist. There are things we would like to not have happen. And in my everyday work, I work with people who are going through physical and emotional and mental trauma, and those are horrible things to experience. But they're, in this nature of reality that I saw, they're allowed. Like every manifestation of anything is allowed, because it is because it exists. And so it's I don't know, it's really changed me a lot, seeing the universe that way. It gives me a lot of confidence in unconditional love. Like it isn't just some kind of aspiration, but it's the essence of reality, that everything is allowed. And everything, not just allowed, but also wanted and loved. So, yeah, that was, I think, Jesus started it all, but then this was like a real, I don't know, a real
awakening, a gift for you specifically. And I can see how that would be so integrative for the work that you do.
Yeah.
It's a great basis for you to have both of those experiences. I'm sure you have many more, but those that you've highlighted in this conversation, those two that you've highlighted, what a beautiful basis for you to do what you do for a living.
Yeah.
And bring that in. So do you have any stories from work now?
Well, so maybe to lead up to that, what I was going to say, and what I've learned from working with Americo Yabar, and reflecting on, what I'd said about Jesus and even this event that I just described, is that I think that it's possible for anybody to experience the things that I've experienced. I don't think I'm special. I was sober, like
it's an important point.
Yes, I've always been sober when I've had experiences, and I feel like I didn't know what to do with them at first. I didn't know what to do with Jesus. I knew more what to do with seeing the universe than I knew what to do with Jesus. And now when I have experiences, I treat them very lightly. I want the wisdom or just the joy of them. But I'm not going to, think that I've got an answer now and I'm going to tell everybody what the answer is, or something like that, because I've had this thing happen to me. But instead, I just approaching it with that lightness of touch to its significance in my life or significance in life. So I work with people who have psychosis, and I really enjoy that. And I have often had them, asking me about these things, about whether or not they're having spiritual experiences or if they're mentally ill, And I mean, in a way, like around some people, I get nervous talking about the experiences I've had because, like, what, you saw a green tar in your bedroom, And one thing that I don't doubt anybody's experience, and I don't doubt the genuineness of the things they're telling me ever. I don't know why I would ever do that. I don't, and you can't like talk a person out of delusion if they're having delusion. You can't talk them out of it. So I think one important thing though is if you can live your life. So we have a conversation about like what illness would mean for them. So if illness means I'm having a hard time getting to work, or I can't take care of myself, I can't like cook a meal for myself, or I can't be in the relationships that I want to be in the way I want to be in them because of the voices I'm hearing or the things I'm seeing, then that is some kind of dis-ease. That is some way that you are unable to live life to your fullest, to the way that you want to live it. And so that might be when whatever it is that you're experiencing in non-ordinary reality is somehow interfering with your fullest capacity to be a human. So if you can engage in non-ordinary reality and, live the life you want to be living, then I don't think it's a disease. It's not an illness. Yeah.
Great distinction.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's interesting because, it's funny how you can be how do you say, a functioning spiritualist with mystical experiences.
Yeah.
and that works for society as long as, in a lot of cases, as long as it's not invited into every piece of culture. I mean, there's certain conversations, like you say, you don't have that conversation with everybody. Maybe Thanksgiving dinner isn't the appropriate place to have these conversations because, you're dealing with people with a much more solidified system of beliefs that can't invite that outside of the box reality. And that's what I think we get caught up in that when we're in these experiences where we can't share that mystical experience, we feel shut out or shut down or devalued. And, so that it'd be interesting from your line of work, are there situations where people feel, I imagine they would, a sense of relief being able to at least share with you without judgment from you these experiences, and that might bring them at least out of the depression or whatever that might be repressing them and keeping them in that state?
Yeah. Yeah. Or just, therapeutically, there's a lot of value in just being heard and being validated, like you were saying, that you feel like you're not alone, or you feel like maybe what happened is something I should pay attention to.
Yeah.
There was a woman I worked with a long time ago who had an NDE, a near-death experience during surgery, and she saw her body on the table, and then she saw the light, and then she talked to her dead aunt, and all this stuff, and felt the love and stuff like that, and then zoop back in the body, and woke up. And she was all excited about this whole thing. And she told her husband right away. And her husband was like, "You can't talk about that. Don't talk about that." Shame. And so then she asked the nurse if there were any chaplains. Could I talk to a chaplain? And so she told me the story, And then there was another woman I worked with who had like a voice tell her, she's driving her car. And the voice said, she heard this voice, "You will be in an accident, but everything will be okay." She pulled the car over. She's like, "No, I'm not going to drive anymore. I don't want to be in an accident." And the voice told her again, "You are going to be in an accident, but everything will be okay." And so she decided to continue driving. And it was like 15 minutes later, she was in an accident, and it was really rough. And she was really hurt, but nobody died. Everything was okay. And she hadn't really talked about it with anybody. And we spent, a good 2 hours just talking about how to understand that and put it in the context of her belief system and what it meant for her life. And like, do I have to, sometimes it's like, I've had this spiritual experience. Do I have to do anything different with my life now? Like, am I supposed to do something different, or am I supposed to change my job or, and just to have somebody to talk about all that with, I think is really important. And as I don't know how much you know about professional chaplains, but it's never about us or our belief system or what we think other people should believe. It's always about the other person. And so whatever it is that works best for them and fits in the context of, their culture and their lives and what they want from life and how to integrate that spiritual encounter within all those things. Yeah. And so I actually like to call myself a spiritual health practitioner, partly because the word chaplain is pretty attached to Christianity. And I'm interested in people having a robust and healthy spiritual life. So I like to use that phrase instead. Yeah.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
I like to, I still don't know. I sort of like am a spiritual life coach. I don't like really any of those words together, but even I'm kind of even like a spiritual teacher to some people, but I don't really, the labels, it's hard. Yeah. But I love that, how you describe that, because I like to think that my intention is that too, is not about what I believe or what I've studied or that all that I've done just helps me to hold space for them to maybe have reference points that I can maybe point them to and help guide them. But it is it's always about them. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's really beautiful.
I had a series of dreams once that made me think really hard about being a spiritual teacher. And in the dreams seemed so real, like I'm experiencing a past life. And I don't think I was a very good teacher in this past life. The students did not look happy to see me entering the room. Yeah. And did not seem assisted by me. And I woke up from this series of dreams, like really thinking hard about maybe who I'd been in previous lives and why it was so hard for me to be part of this confessional faith, the Lutheran Church, and why I was still continuing to reject religious structure just repeatedly, and how I was feeling the delicacy of whether or not I was going to share what I believe or what I think about reality with anybody, because I didn't know if I could do that well. And so I feel like kind of in this lifetime, I was propelled into religious or spiritual leadership again. But for the past 2 decades, it's been in the form of listening instead of speaking. So I'm still not sure where this will all go. I don't know if some karma has changed, at all. Because I do like to tell people about the unconditional love of reality whenever I feel it's appropriate. But yeah.
And just emanating that because you've had that experience, and just I'm sure both, hearing that from you, but also feeling that from you, it's just really, gosh, what an awesome conversation and story, Maren. I mean, just really, really, really beautiful. Yeah. So interesting. You've got about 5 books in you.
You think so?
Mm-hmm. I do.
I've got my master's thesis right here, which is all nice and what do you call it? Analog.
Bound.
Yeah, it's analog. This is all I have. So,
girl, that's all you have? Got to change that soon. Get an intern to type it up. Yeah.
Or a really good scanner or something.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah, I mean, I love podcasts, and I love, I love that you're a big fan of Rick Archer and the Buddha at the gas pump. And this is our little, we didn't even know about Buddha at the gas pump when we started this.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Isn't that weird? Like we really, I kind of listened to Tim Ferriss. I listened to Russell Brand. But I didn't know about Rick, funny enough, when we decided to do this. Sean, had you heard of Buddha at the gas? No. Yeah. So I just kind of recently found Rick. I think I found him a few months before we interviewed Jack.
Yeah.
But I didn't know
that with her.
Yeah, exactly. And I didn't know that they started it until Jack said she did. And then I've listened to other podcasts where Rick said, "Oh, we're going to start this thing." And, since heard it. But now that I'm listening, because now I'm going back and listening, and I'm listening to current ones, and I love it. And I'm like, oh, we're kind of like a little mini Buddha at the gas pump kind of thing.
I like your premise, though, of, because I don't know if I can assume that I've actually landed anywhere, but I have had something happen to me.
Yeah.
So I like starting there. I appreciate that. Yeah.
Well, and I think what's fun is being able to hear, having no relationship with you outside of this is the first time we met, and here we are having this conversation and going, back over some of the, the deeper, intimate spiritual experiences that you've had. What I find kind of interesting about yours particularly is that, you started off with a deep spiritual connection to Christianity, and the foundation and basis of Christianity is in unconditional love and acceptance. And the irony is that you had to go outside of that organization of religion to discover how to embody that for yourself. And you walked your path, and you've had, you haven't veered too far away from it, but you took all that understanding and that wisdom and knowledge that you gained from that experience with these very unique to the faith, experiences. Mm-hmm. And that has brought you pretty much full circle to the foundation of, what Christ would speak about. And so that's what's fun. I love these conversations in that regard, because we think we're going on this extreme exodus from everything, because I've been on that so many. Corinne has watched me, spiral out back and forth so many times, and it's like we're going so far to get right back to where it feels like we were always, existing from, and that center of unconditional love.
Yeah. Yep.
The hero's journey. The hero's journey. What's that, Sean?
I said you made it back to you.
Yeah.
Exactly.
You come back to the same place you started with new eyes, seeing it for the very first time.
Yeah.
That's the hero's journey. And one of my favorite things, Maren, about your, there's so many great points along the way, but I really loved, because I've also had a lot of mystical experiences in my life. Starting off with, I actually remember before I was born. So I've always had that with me. And so I love that you said that it's not to put too much importance on it, but figure out what it is in your life, but not focus on it, because I think that's what tends to happen to people when they have awakenings, when they have mystical experiences, is they put too much. They want to get back there. They want to figure it out. They want to, and just to have a little bit of a lightness with it, it'll seep into you the way it's supposed to, but not to kind of try to go back to it or, all that. Because I've been through that with a few of my experiences where I spent a year trying to, I got to get back to that, so right. I appreciate you saying that.
Yeah. And, which reminds me, one of the other things I do is teach mindfulness, and it's really so valuable to just be in the moment again, because this moment is just as amazing as the moment when I saw Jesus, Yeah. So, I love to just sit and look at the sky, listen to some jazz.
It's available, man. That space of awareness is always available. And, that an experience like, seeing Jesus in a hallway like that's a metaphor for what's always available. And, to go back to that hallway expecting to see Jesus, you're putting too much importance on the hallway, and I think we do that in so many different ways, is you're putting too much importance on the identity of the thing, and not the fluidness of the fact that this, now you're in a different, now you're in your bedroom, now you're, in a closet, now you're in a classroom, and realizing that you can be in that space of awareness with, the universe as you saw it, waking up from sleep, and it's all there and it's all beautiful.
Yeah. And I think reality wants to be known that way.
Yeah.
That reality wants to be known as something fluid and known as something that can surprise us and have a dynamic relationship with us instead of a static relationship, that these things are alive. The water that we're looking at is alive, and the trees are alive, and allowing them to not be this thing that we have created in our minds, or really specifically other people. Yeah. That somehow we get an idea of this person is this way, and now I'm going to develop this attitude with this person, and I'm going to change my energy because I have this idea in my head about how this person is, and we're not allowing, the transformation or the energy to move, and I think one of the greatest gifts of Christianity is forgiveness.
Yeah,
it's the greatest gift to the world, and forgiveness is a powerful way to change energy, so that you're not stuck in this idea, of how things were. But forgiveness is about how they can be. They can continue to grow and unfold and be more aware of love. And we can just really get stuck. I mean, we're really stuck as a country. Got a lot of really serious beliefs about stuff, and we're getting mad at each other, and we're not fluid. We're not creative. We're not open.
Yeah.
We are sure that we know what reality is. Yeah. And to our peril. Yeah.
Yes.
Heard that, man. That's and that emphasizes the importance of connecting with that space of unconditional love, acceptance, and forgiveness inside of you, and having that sense about your own self, and then protruding that out into the world and making it known that that's possible. Because I think that's one of the limiting beliefs is we as a culture don't realize that that's possible. We don't realize that change, well, is inevitable, but it is possible. And we can grow, we can shift in major ways. And it's, the answer is actually pretty simple. It's just, integrating that into that many, people's perspectives and spaces is the hard thing. So here we are.
And thank you for saying that it like starts with you, and like how much you can love yourself and how much you can just be okay with who you are as a person. Yeah. Can I tell one quick manifesting story?
Yes.
Okay. So I studied with Turgar. I don't know if you know that organization, but Yongey Mingyur Rinpoche, who is a Tibetan Buddhist teacher.
I know that name. Mm-hmm.
He has different teaching groups throughout the world. And so one of his teachers that works within the community said he had asked him one time, because they'd organized this whole thing, and the chairs hadn't shown up, and they're all worried about the chairs, like, we're gonna get the chairs. And then the chairs, like, everything fell into place and it all worked out okay. And so he asked Mingyur Rinpoche, he said, how come, like, when we need things, and we're organizing, that it just all works out? And Mingyur Rinpoche said, bodhicitta. And so bodhicitta is the awareness that, first of all, everything is connected. Like, it's all connected. But then what benefits me benefits everything else, because everything is connected, and I am you and you're me and all that. And so this, he said, this is how Mingyur Rinpoche is manifesting, is using bodhicitta. It's that knowledge that everything is connected, and I am going to be with the intent of the highest good for everyone, the benefit of all being. And so if it will benefit all beings that we have chairs so we can sit around and meditate, then we're going to get chairs. Yeah. So I love that idea about manifesting, and was just recently thinking what it would be like if more people sat in bodhicitta manifesting around the world. Yeah. Like, when people talk about raising the vibration of the planet, I think like that's really what they're thinking about.
Yeah.
It's, a bunch of people bringing in the intent in themselves for the energy. Yeah. To
me, that's the only thing that's going to change everything, is critical mass.
Yeah.
And I feel like it's always going in that direction, but I feel like the pandemic was a really big, because there's been no other time where the whole world, with as many people as we have in it, are all sort of focused on the same thing. And for the 3 months, everything was shut down, and we may not have all been sitting down and meditating and having peace in our hearts, but there was definitely much more coherence. And and so there's this shift, and that I feel that's happening. I think many people are feeling that's happening. But at the same time, whenever there's this shift in this critical mass of going in this more awakening state, there's going to be the struggle along with it that we're feeling and seeing as well. Yeah. And I think it's just a matter of being okay with that. It's uncomfortable. It's the butterfly coming out of the cocoon. Thank you. It can be painful and uncomfortable, and we just do the best we can and hold space by being present and with whatever shows up. Mm-hmm. Because inside the chrysalis, it's mush. Yeah. Like nothing unformed in there. Yeah. True. It's mush. Yeah. I think there was a lot of mush this past 18 months.
Yeah.
A lot of mush.
A lot of liminal lives. Yeah. Not knowing. Yeah.
I always say, we've just been allowed to have the illusion that everything's going to be okay. And we're just not allowed to have the illusion anymore. Everything has always been this way. We don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. We can't really make plans, but now it's very evident. It was always like that, but we just had the illusion that we could make plans and it was going to all work out.
Yeah. Yeah.
So and then people can hopefully show up to live more fluid, as you were saying, less boxed in, less concrete, and more fluid and in tune, with nature. And I focus on that. I'm aware of what's going on. I watch a little bit of news and do a little bit of Facebook, but I'm very much into holding the space of a higher frequency and meditative and peaceful and sharing unconditional love wherever I can, rather than focusing on the problems.
Yeah. Yeah. In one of your previous conversations, someone was talking about David Hawkins and power versus force. And what he says is that the higher vibrations, that it really only takes like one or two people on the planet at a really high vibration to counterbalance the negativity of everything that's less than 200. Yeah, because the vibrations are so high. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. So, you listened to the one with Donna. I know which one you listened to. My friend Donna, who's 86 years old. I know. I remember. Yeah. She's one of my old Chopra friends from years ago. Yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Well, Maren, we could talk to you. I mean, really, you seem like our best friend. Like we just met an hour and a half ago.
Yeah. And I told you before how much fun Portland is. So you got to come out here, right?
Yes. As soon as the borders are more easily crossable, I go to Canada because my family's all from Canada. So I fly into Vancouver. I was in Vancouver for 5 weeks in August. Just Vancouver, Canada, not Vancouver, Oregon. And then I'm going back up there in December. So I totally would come down and visit you. But hopefully, we will as soon as the borders are a little more.
I'm so glad you got to go to Canada. That's wonderful.
Yeah, well, I'm Canadian. So, luckily I was allowed to go see my family. It took 18 months, but I was finally able to go. Yeah. Yeah. What a blessing to meet you. Thank you for saying yes. And thank you you're so much fun. And I want to be there to support you if you want that book to come out. I mean, the title, I think the title of this podcast is going to be Jesus in the Hallway. What is your thesis have a name?
Oh, no, that's fine.
But Jesus in the Hallway might be a good name for your book too. I'm just saying. I just want to support getting, your message and your vibe out there. So I'm happy. We're happy to be a little bit of a part of that, to share it with our community, and you share it with yours and get the word out.
Yeah. Thank you so much. It's just wonderful to meet both of you. Yeah.
This was really fun, man.
Good. What'd you say?
I said, this was fun. Thank you. Thank you very much. For not having done a lot of podcasts, this was very, very smooth and easy. So you should do more of these. You're good at it.
Okay.
All right. Until we meet again.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
And we are now in the Say More section. After speaking to Maren Aspaas, I resonated with a lot of her early childhood. She kind of started in high school and into her college. I resonated with it a lot because it was very parallel to some experiences that I had, particularly with having experiences that were induced by spirit coming from religion and what was taught, and being in certain spaces to have experiences kind of, similar to what she was talking about, but then those experiences not being accepted into the culture of that religion, not being accepted into the box of that, allocated belief system, or how I don't really know how to put it, but it becomes this box of identity of this religion believes this, and if it's anything outside, it can't be real, or it can't be true, or if we don't know what to do with it, it doesn't belong. And so I resonated a lot with that.
Yeah. Isn't it interesting how some people are raised in a specific religion and they stay in that religion their entire lives and it works for them.
Yeah.
And other people are raised in a specific religion and it never fits right.
Right.
And for her, she was raised in Lutheran specific religion, went to Lutheran school, then went to Lutheran college, and then went to Lutheran seminary. And that's when, she hit a wall and it started to not feel comfortable. And then really has sort of been kind of breaking down the boundaries and the labels ever since. And, because of the first, good 15 minutes of the conversation was about her Lutheran upbringing.
Yeah.
And so I was really curious to see when it was going to take a turn and how it was going to take a turn. And in the midst of all that, meeting Jesus in the hallway and having her walk her to her dorm room, and he was floating on the floor. Can people even wrap their minds? For me, because I've had some mystical experiences, not so much when I'm awake. I've had not like that for sure. Like I haven't seen angels. I kind of actually have seen kind of other worlds though when I'm awake. I remember pumping gas one time and I looked up in the clouds and I kind of had a vision of like all the worlds existing at once kind of thing. But I well, what do you think of that? I totally am into it. I love it. I love that she shared it, believe it. What do you think of that?
Oh yeah, that doesn't surprise me at all. I've always been, which is really funny to me because there are so many instances within the Bible of mystical experiences.
Many.
Christ lived a mystical life in a lot of ways. There was, and I think what was really hard for me to parse out about that faith in the denomination that I was in was, just that why did these experiences stop? That was my question but they don't call them mystical experiences when it's Christ. They're miracles. And that's what's interesting is as soon as you project that, well, this is the norm for this one person, but it can't be the norm for any other people, even though the underlying circuitry of Christianity is you have your own personal relationship with God, and that will manifest in your life in a very unique way. And the way to navigate that is to follow in the footsteps of Christ and the teaching of Christ. And that's what's fascinating to me the most is, if Christ was a teacher and nowadays, and okay, well, a physical teacher, born into this time period teacher, and Maren went to him with that story and she was talking about a different, person. I don't suspect that Jesus would say anything except, well, it sounds like God is trying to speak to you, or, it sounds like there's a message here, or what did you feel? Like, let's explore that. I feel very deeply. You can sense that kind of energy from the Christ consciousness. And what's interesting is that that's not invited into the conversation. I speak tongues. I've had plenty of experiences with that. That happened to me in high school the first time where, we were on this, mission trip and we were playing Truth or Dare in the back. And I was like, this is stupid. We're on a Christian missions trip playing Truth or Dare. And it's just silly high school shit. So we said, let's start praying. I don't know why that was the route, because I wasn't a particularly heavy prayer at that time, but we're all praying, and it took me over and I started speaking in tongues in the back of a van on the way back from Missouri, I think is where we're coming from. And can I explain that in the context of the social landscape? No, I can't. And I think that's where, she gets into, is this a dysfunction? No, it's not. It hasn't been for me, because I've been able to live, somewhat of a secondary life. I have a secret life of, mystical experiences, and those conversations don't come out, because I recognize who or when those situations are acceptable, not because sorry, there's a lot to unpack here, but there's a couple of paths to go here, because when you live that path, you feel very isolated because you don't have anybody to talk to. And it sounded like she was kind of in that world. I hope that we can get to a space that when somebody has a mystical experience like that, I say mystical only being an unknown and unexplainable. Like there's not a catalyst necessarily. There's not a psilocybin trip that induces it. But my hope is that we don't cause that person to enter into a repressive state simply because something happened to them that was unexplainable to them. I mean, that's the nuts and bolts of that situation. We immediately throw an identity and an object into that play and be like, oh, this person's crazy. Don't trust them. You can't. It's like, oh, wait, I'm just asking the question like she did. What does this mean? How does this work out? And yeah, it doesn't surprise me that, sorry, to answer your question directly, it does not surprise me that she had that experience. And it doesn't surprise me that people have these experiences all the time. Does that mean we should go all try to find Jesus Christ in that hallway? No, I don't think that's how that works. But be open to the experience as it manifests in your life.
Yeah. I mean, I loved how she described it, what she sort of feel like it was the energy, you know, and that's what was her belief system, and probably her focus at that time, and manifestation of the energy. You know, if you want to explain it, I don't think she feels like she needs to explain, but that might have been part of her thesis that she was talking about. Yeah. But yeah, I mean, and also too, that you know, the importance of not putting everything into it, you know, and that's the mindfulness piece coming back to it is like, yes, you have these experiences, and the non-dual people would explain it like, well, experiences come and go, but awareness is always there.
Yeah.
And so, you know, and so not to live in the past with that experience or try to recreate it even, which I had done, especially with that one experience that I had of feeling at one with the universe for 3 weeks. I really, you know, mourned when that was gone. It was, I felt lonely for a year because I felt like it had gone, and now I realized it hadn't gone anywhere. Just my attention, I didn't know how to pay attention to it at that time.
Yeah.
But yeah, she's so well spoken and articulate, and really embodies, you know, these things that, like, her journey really, you could see how, I guess the same way, like writing my book, looking back and writing stories, I can see how it's sort of made up who I am today and how I express myself in the world. Yeah. And that's what I could see with her, with her turning point stories, was I could see how beautifully it supported who she is in the world right now. Yeah.
Well, and it hearing her story and, you know, her struggle to try to understand what these experiences mean for her as an individual, it makes sense very clearly why she would have ended up being in this, you know, profession that she's in, and why she would be doing these things. And I think it points to why it's important to be open and have these conversations with people, with each other. And, you know, it's a very unpopular position I think she's taking from that medical field, where it's a diagnose and prescribe kind of a thing. It's looking at patterns and then knowing that this is going to solve the problem for that pattern. And what I guess I'm becoming more and more present to is there's not necessarily an obvious pattern with how these mystical experiences or how awareness is going to manifest into life, into your life. I mean, it's kind of like what you said. We have this illusion that we can predict far enough into the future to have undying security. Like, you know, we can intellectualize it and have enough information to be able to look across the rest of our life, which is actually hilarious because you have absolutely no idea how long your life is actually going to live. So immediately, you know, it hits a wall there when you start looking at it from that space of awareness and understanding, like, you don't know. You can't possibly predict all the variables as they unfold, because it is just constantly unfolding in this when I sent you a text, I don't know, was it last week? I was like, I feel like I'm in divinely orchestrated chaos. Only because it seems like chaos to me, because I don't understand how or why things are unfolding the way they are. But it feels divinely orchestrated because I'm connecting with the common thread that I know to be present with as I'm going through an unknown circumstance. And I think that's what Christians call God. I think that's, what Buddhists call the self. I think that space of awareness that you connect to, there's freedom because you're not attaching yourself to your projections of the future. You're in a flow state and you're just being present to that flow state.
Yeah. I mean, when we have more belief or more energy into our thoughts rather than the present moment or our life that's unfolding in front of us, that's like having a belief in a script of a story, that may or may not happen.
Yeah.
And, right. There was a quote that I found today, actually, that reminds me, see if I have it here. Nothing in life is as important as you think it is when you're thinking about it.
Yeah. There you
right?
go. Yeah. And that, to expand upon what you're saying, I mean, it's like while you're trying to act out the life that you're trying to write with your thoughts all the time, there's an even cooler life but it's
there.
And it's there with or without your participation.
Right.
And that's the trippiest mindfuck of them all is instead of thinking you can write the whole thing out, try living the story that's being
written in the moment.
Yeah, there you go. It's pretty fucking fantastic.
It is. Like she said, she just likes going out, like she's had these mystical experiences and yet she also downplayed it. She was like totally into it. And then also is like, but I believe anybody can have that experience. And I totally agree with that. I know you do too. And she said, and going out and just staring up the clouds in the sky is really just as mystical as hanging out with Jesus in the hallway.
Yeah, it is.
It is when you're fully present. If you're multitasking in your mind, if you're laying there looking at the clouds and then you're on your phone and then, all over the place, then it's not. But if you really, and just take it all in of what that really means, looking up at the clouds is like, there's a whole universe beyond that we can't see.
Yes.
I mean, when we get caught up in life on the hamster on the wheel, life seems so small, but life is so miraculous and massive all the time in every second. And we just, I guess, get lost in the matrix, just get lost in the conditioning and the reactions and the stories. But really you let go of all that. The green, I love that she described that so well. When you call this amazing color that's reflected that we happen to see, we call it green. All of a sudden it makes it solid and it makes it less beautiful.
Yeah.
Even staring out at a landscape, calling it a landscape, it makes it shrinks it a little bit, but just how about just staring out and just experiencing it and taking it all in without naming it or having to take a photo of it or
assuming that it because you know it by its name. That's where I'm feeling like being in, just you call it a landscape, so you know it as a landscape, but you don't know that landscape intimately. You don't know the hills and the valleys of it, the type of rock, the type of grass. Is it just grass? Are there other plants? You don't know anything about it except to point at it from a distance and call it a thing that barely correlates to what it really is, and that seems to be the operation mode in a lot of ways. And I mean, I feel that so many times, I feel that with fear, and I feel that with other things that come up, and it's trying to make things be the small version of itself all the time, because that's easier to understand and it's easier to compartmentalize something small. And so that was a great analogy on her part to, and it's fun. Poetry is fun because there's almost this innate quality of poetry that the poetry itself knows that it's lacking in fullness because it's trying to describe something that it knows it can't. And that's the tongue in cheek. The irony about poetry is it's failing while it's succeeding at the same time. And there's something kind of magical about that. And so, yeah, it's powerful.
You want to hear a little piece of poetry that I wrote when I was in my oneness state?
Yeah. Hell yeah, I do. Better be good though.
Now I know why poetry moves my soul, for poetry is my soul.
Hell yeah. There you go.
Yeah. Same with music, man. Music is the language of the soul. Music connects us all without language. Even, whether there's words or not, doesn't matter. If we know the language or not, we can connect with music that we don't know the language of, right?
Yeah.
Just the melody and the music. Yeah, it was I really enjoyed that interview a lot.
It really, actually, that was very much like, spiritual tea time. It was a conversation we blew past
an hour and a half.
Oh man. And then we talked for like another
45 minutes after we hung up. Yeah.
Just about life and know each other. It's, it's when you recognize that there's somebody, that far away, on the other side of the country, and yet you correlate and connect on so many levels because of the experiences that we've had. It's wonderful.
Yeah. I guess I kind of feel that with most of our guests, but with her, there was a certain comfortability that as soon as she got on, we were telling jokes the first 5 minutes of meeting her.
Yeah, we actually paused because it took us too long to get in. We were laughing too much before we started the interview. So yeah, it was fun. It was light. It was, it was wonderful perspective on, so many things that need to be discussed and perspectives. And I really enjoy that. And if we are in Portland, we'll connect. I'm sure that'd be amazing.
Yeah. I hope I get to meet Maren in person sometime. She'd be really cool to hang out with. I mean, we did hang out with her, but to hang out in person would be go for a hike or something,
I want to go see Jesus and God in a psych ward in a hospital.
Yeah.
I want to see how that plays out. So she's doing some great work, and she's got a great heart and a great soul for it. And, we'll see where her life takes her, but, I'm sure it'll take her someplace that's very cool.
Yeah. All right, honey. Another one down, another week down. I love these. So much fun. Really.
Yeah, we're cruising. We're reaching our 1 year anniversary.
That's right. That is coming up. 6
or 7 weeks, I guess.
Should be. Yeah. I think we started in November.
Yeah, November 1st or something like that.
I'll have to look back on I have the date.
Ooh, it's coming up, man.
Okay. So we should do just you and I for our anniversary?
Yeah, I think so. Absolutely.
Okay.
Be good.
All right. Well, I love you.
Love you too. Have a great night.